first time ever, let's remember this is what it looked like, and let's welcome you guys to the new Easy Drummer 2. A little bit different. A round of applause. Can we get some volume on the notes here? There you go. Now, before we get started, let's just sort of, again, take everything into account. We've just heard the drums. We're kind of all, I think, a little bit in awe about where we're standing, how it sounds. Just some real quick feedback. Were you shocked they sounded that good? No? That's a good thing. That's good feedback. Were you shocked when you were wrong on which drums were which? You're not going to admit it, but you were. That's great. So, okay. We've listened to some drums. We've talked about the team a little bit. We're in the facility. Let's sort of take a look into Easy Drummer 2. Everybody's familiar, I think, with Easy Drummer 1. We just saw the photo. So we're going to go, we're actually going to start up here in the left-hand corner, and we're going to work through it like you read, from left to right. So obviously, the first thing you notice upon looking at Easy Drummer 2 is a redesigned graphic interface. It's kind of a cool update on our classic behind-the-kit view. Sort of just a little side note in history, when the original Easy Drummer 2 was released in 2006, the behind-the-kit view wasn't popular and didn't really exist in drum programs. That was sort of our thing. I think we would all agree it was a good thing for us to innovate because it seems that that's the only view you get these days, which is fine. So we've gone in and we've updated the graphics. The next step is that you'll see we've sort of broken the workflow out into just various tabs. The original Easy Drummer allowed you to access screens from one particular panel. We thought this would be a little bit more conducive to streamlining your workflow. So again, while we're talking about the tabs, the first tab you see is the browser tab after the drums. And this is clearly just sort of our legacy browser. You'll notice this looks just like the original Grooves browser from Easy Drummer 1. And this was a conscious effort to make sure that in sort of the host of new features, that our original users and the users that update Easy Drummer 2 don't get lost. They still feel like they know how to work the program without really having to dive in and learn anything new. So you can simply scroll through your MIDI packs. Clearly I have a lot of MIDI packs. You can select, everything's the same. Nothing changes in the browser. We'll do a little bit more on that later. You'll notice you've got your drop-down menu. You click on it and you'll have access to all of your sound expansion libraries, your EasyX libraries. You'll see here we've got Easy Drummer 2 Modern and Vintage. We're going to go a little bit more over the EasyX and sort of kind of the updates to our kit selection in a moment. It should be noted, though, that we really care about our existing user base. And again, with the success of Easy Drummer worldwide, we've tried to incorporate as many sort of value-laden things as we could for our existing user base. So, that being said, everybody that's been buying EasyXs since 2006 all the way through now will have all their EasyX graphics updated for free to match this new sort of kit. So let's go to the original Pop Rock kit. Does everybody remember what that looked like? Let's remember the new Pop Rock kit. So everybody's going to get updated graphics as a result of working with Easy Drummer 2, which is nice. There's another cool feature-laden thing for these X's too, but I'll get to that in a minute. So let's go back. We're actually using the original mix kit here, and I'm going to change a couple of things out because we thought it's pretty nice, right? See that in a second. Talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You have a menu over here, and again, a typical drop-down menu gives you a lot of things, including access to the manual. Something else new in Easy Drummer that a lot of you may notice or may have slipped your mind, but if you recall, prior to Easy Drummer 2, you needed to open our Solo software wrapper to open Easy Drummer in standalone mode. Easy Drummer 2 just works in regular standard standalone mode at this point in time, so you can just open it up straight on your desktop and start working. You no longer are required to use Solo to access it. AU, VST, AAX, PCY, JA, whatever acronym you have, it works and all that stuff, okay? Also in the menu, you'll notice something else kind of cool, which is expanded eDrum support. We started to hear kind of an outpouring of folks wanting to use our Easy programs with their e-kits. So inside that menu, you actually get kind of a, I don't want to call it stripped down, but it is a stripped down menu from our Superior product that allows you to basically select the manufacturer. You've got some pedal correction, and just line up with your e-kit, which is kind of cool. If we come around and we look at the bottom, one of the biggest additions to the home screen, and actually if you scroll through the screens, on every screen, it's always anchored at the bottom, is our song track. And the song track is ultimately our way, our new kind of redesigned way for you to work with your grooves right in the program. So you can actually start working with your drum grooves and MIDI right in Easy Drummer before you even open your DAW. So for instance, we're the ones that pioneered the drag and drop MIDI technology. You could simply drag your groove down to the song track and start working. Simple enough. You can actually loop it. You have all your transport controls. You can see your time signature, your tempo, which you can adjust with the slider, or you can actually tap it in. There's actually a click track, which we'll talk about in a little bit more in a minute. A song creator button, which is a big secret that now is going to distract you the entire time because I said it's a big secret and I'm not going to talk about it yet. And then you have your master volume here as well. So let's take this loop off. There's a couple of other features. Obviously, you can cut and edit your loops. There's some levels of undo. You can zoom in on the actual scroll. It has its own drop-down menu that actually has functions and features that are kind of relative to working with your MIDI. Okay? So if we come back here and we go back to the kit graphic, I think everybody that's used EasyDrummer is familiar with our drop-down instrument properties menu. You can actually access it by clicking the button, or in this case, you can right-click as well. And there's a couple of things that you have access to instantly. First and foremost, nothing changes. You have access to all the drums that were recorded for that instrument in this session. You can scroll through them effortlessly. But now you can actually change the volume of the individual drums in the instrument properties window right there. You can command-click to get back to 0. You can change the pitch right there, because we all know that's what everybody wants. You can bring that back. And you actually have this really cool preview pad at the bottom that will allow you to hear all the different trigger articulations of that drum all the way up. You can sample it. So if we go back to our edge drum, we'll start there. You also have this really cool kit preset. So like we talked about for the modern session, this DW kit is this DW kit, only we made it white because that's just how we do it. So this is the exact same kit, but it wasn't the only kit we recorded for this session, this modern session. So by selecting the kit preset, you can actually go in and load the other kits. You see some drums get grayed out to accommodate what was actually recorded. So we can load the Gretsch kit we recorded. We could go in and do the same thing. We also recorded a Yamaha 9000 kit through this thing. So you can go through and load your kits as well if you want a specific kit. For our points and purposes here, let's go back to the DW kit since that's what's out there. So something else that you probably noticed in the instrument properties menu is we've got a highlighted menu drop down here. So I told you earlier we've been trying to think about the value we can add for our existing EasyDrummer users. And you know, with 8 years between products, there's a lot you learn from the people that buy your stuff. One of the most requested features was the ability to mix and match drums from their EasyX libraries. So in EasyDrummer 2, you can now do that. You can go in and select individual instruments from any particular EasyX library that you have on your hard drive, and you can go ahead and swap those instruments out accordingly. You still have all the controls, functions, everything works. You can just create your own kits. Actually, if you want to start out that way in the kit menu, you can preload an empty kit and just start selecting drums immediately. You can tailor your drums to the sound you have in your head based on what you've already worked with, which is pretty cool. It's a unique feature, and you might say, why is it taking you guys so long to do it? And we would say, because anything worth doing is worth waiting for. So this is kind of our expanded instrument properties at a glance. Obviously, as you guys will work with the software in the future, you'll dive in and look through things yourself. Everybody feel good about this page? Anything missing that we didn't see? We feel good? Okay. Browser page. Again, I wish I could tell you that text was sexy, but it's not. Clearly, you just have a view of your MIDI. You see where it is. And this, again, is really for the people that have EasyDrummer, and we want to make sure they still can just open EasyDrummer 2 and immediately work with the program. We're going to skip the search page for a minute. We're going to go to the mixer page. Now, this probably looks very familiar to most of you who've seen EasyDrummer. You have a new updated version of the EasyDrummer mixer. You can see, obviously, depending on what kit you have loaded, the channel strips will correspond accordingly to the way it was tracked and mixed for EasyDrummer. Make sense? Everyone's with me so far? You've got your solo, your mute, your pan. You can route your outputs, and you actually have control over all of the basic functions here in the mixer, just like you would in the original EasyDrummer. Now, you see down here at the bottom this mic bleed component. So we're going to go back to what we were discussing a little bit earlier about our expanded EasyX features. Let's actually go in, and we're in the modern kit. Let's load something that we're calling our mixer presets. You'll notice when you select an EasyX and you drag the arrow over, you have a number of things. We're in the original mix, but let's say we're going to go to everybody's favorite disco pop. I could read it in the room that this is what you guys were listening to on the way in. You'll notice not only does the mixer change to accommodate the sound set or the ideal version in our mind of what disco pop is, but you'll notice this effects down here changes. So let's talk about a couple things first. Let's pull a groove in from our desktop. How easy was that? And let's loop it. Let's make sure I'm not turning everyone's head off. Let's just play. Oh yeah. We're one disco ball away from a real party in here now. Okay? Simple enough. What you're hearing is the drum set, as it was configured for this particular mixer preset. So let me try and explain this in the way that makes the most sense, as to not trivialize, again, this whole concept of making things really complicated very easy. Anyone that understands basic signal routing would presume that we have an EQ and a reverb strapped across the master bus, and everything's running through that and being affected by these. And of course, these knobs will allow you some general control over that. If you're familiar with our EasyMix 2 software, basically our effects section in EasyDrummer 2 is built on that engine. So you'd be partially right and partially wrong. What's really happening is behind the scenes, the Tune Track design team has gone in to every single channel, applied instances of this EQ and reverb individually to the channels so that it's affected ideally for that particular instrument. A reverb wash on the master channel will wash everything. A reverb wash on the snare channel will just wash the snare. Now, what happens magically is all of those macro editing things micro editing, are now available to you in macro move. So as you turn the bass up, the bass will be turned up relatively on the channels based on what instrument it is. So the bass in the ambient channels will not be turned up the exact same level as the bass on the kick drum, so on and so forth. So it's a smooth, really harmonious transition for the effects. It's not just a set it and forget it sort of knob. It's really designed to help you get into your songwriting and make the most out of your time with the kit without having to go in and figure all these things out for yourself. Make sense so far? Did I lose anybody when I flipped micro and macro? That's on tape, so I get to live with that for the rest of my life.
Can you also do individual outs, though?
Yes. Not for the effects. The effects are all on the master.
Depends. If it's on the fader, you can.
If it is. So yeah, if it's married to the fader, you can. There you go.
Like the reverb, you can have separate on that particular concept.
So, and again, as you scroll through these different kit presets, we know that we're good at metal. All we do is that's what made it metal is the reverb, which is my favorite. Simple enough. Now, let's go to the vintage kits. You guys, we talked about the two consoles. Let's actually load the original mix of the vintage kit. It's actually pretty impressive. Different graphic. What's really, really cool now about these mixer presets is, as I said earlier, not only are we updating the EasyXs with new graphics, but all of the EasyXs that exist will get brand new mixer presets available to our users for free, just so they can use in EasyDrummer 2. So every EasyX library you've owned now just got an updated interface and new updated presets that'll help you to make the most out of it. And again, that's, we feel, one of the smallest and greatest things we can do for our customers to give them a new experience with all the gear they have. Sound good so far? Any questions about the mixer? No? Pretty basic. Okay. So we're going to go to the search tab. I'm going to remove this groove. We're going to turn this off. And the search tab is a brand new feature for EasyDrummer. And the search tab is a response from us to the way that people generally tend to look for the grooves they're looking for. And again, if we go back to the browser, the original EasyDrummer gave you the option to basically go into the packs, by pack, or your MIDI files and search for things. And over time, you become familiar with it, right? You know you like this, you use this. Search takes it to a whole new level. Again, let's start up here. Tap to find. You guys are probably all very astute journalist types, I think. You could probably figure out what that is, but we're going to talk about it in a second. The filter system is what comes next. And as you see these columns, these are ultimately tags that you can apply to the MIDI you're looking for. So for instance, if you knew your groove was in your New York Volume 3 library, you wanted it to be jazz, 4/4, and swing, you would get those grooves. Simple enough. You can go through and it'll find all of the grooves it thinks fits your particular criteria. You can clear your filters out, and you can actually customize your filters here. There's a number of things you can add or subtract to both not only how you search, but the display for when it's found, which is kind of cool as well. Also cool is our anti-tag feature. So for instance, let's say that you totally don't want anything from the Metal Foundry, right-click, and you're so not into disco, and you don't ever want to hear anything in 5/4 again. You can simply anti-tag all of that MIDI, and it will no longer show up in your searches, so you don't have to worry. It seems like overkill, but now that I mentioned what you can do, you must be like, yeah, I probably will get all the disco grooves out of there. I'm kind of over that. Then you can also go and re-tag when you're done. So let's go to Tap to Find. A couple things about Tap to Find that I want to clarify first, up front. The tempo set at 120 BPM. So what happens when we open Tap to Find is you'll hear a click track, because it's expecting you to tap what you're looking for. Now, you can change the click track that's playing, right? So you can tap slower like most of us will do and then speed it up. However, when you slow this click track down, it has no effect on your master tempo. So the two are completely unrelated. Make sense? So you'll also see that there's a level of quantize you can select, all the way down to 16th note. And other than that, it's pretty simple. There's a number of ways to tap to find. You can actually tap the drums. Or I have a MIDI controller hooked up, so okay? It's horrible, right? Let's clear that. We can clear everything out, or we can select what to clear out. Let's use this MIDI pad here. Let's just tap in my favorite groove of this entire trip. Simple, just like I played. Is there anyone singing Living After Midnight by Judas Priest in their head right now? Because we've been doing it all week. So let's hit show results. And you know what? We're still in a vintage kit, which sounds great, but for the sake of argument, let's go back to our original DW kit. Okay, once you're in tap to find, first of all, the groove you tapped in is always available. And you'll see that it comes up with a series of matches. And clearly, this is telling you that the groove you're looking for, I just found 100% of it. So I'd say it's pretty accurate. Now, what you see are some variations of this groove. You can come down and select whichever one you think is going to work best. What's this one? Ruined Road. Okay, I kind of like this already. It's snappy. So once you find the groove you're looking for, you can drag it down to your timeline. It's a little bit longer for what I'd like to work with. So you can select your editing tool. You can just chop it. Let's just keep it right there. Go back and let's remove the parts we're not going to use. Drag this to the beginning of our timeline and loop it, and we're good to go. Nice. Okay, simple enough. I'd say it's very successful. It should be noted too, I'm going to clear this out. Let's just remove this. And we'll go back into our tap to find. I did not go and record a hi-hat. So let's clear this all out. And let's show you kind of a unique way that if you don't have a MIDI controller, you can work with it. So you can just click on it. Simple, right? It's almost like step sequencing. Everyone's familiar with this? Now, the problem normally is if you want to program hi-hat, you're kind of tethered to whatever articulation you have loaded in the kit. Well, and that's not true. You can select between closed and open now. So we've got closed. Then we can switch to open. Right? Now we've got our open. Simple enough. We can show our results. Right? A little bit different because we put that in ourselves, yeah? Pretty cool, right? So you have options even if you don't have a fancy-dancy MIDI controller these days. So let's clear out of all of our filters. And we actually, like a cooking show, have our groove prepared already. So we'll drag our groove back in so that we don't have to go through that. So this is what we were listening to. Simple enough. Now there's a couple of other ways we want to show you that you can work with your MIDI as far as finding the right groove or at least starting to articulate the right groove. We've got it looped. I told you you could actually use your click track and record function, so simply you can record straight into the timeline. If you want to go and you want to add toms, because we know that's what most drummers always do when you say change the beat is you just add toms. So you can actually pretend you're the normal drummer and go through. Okay. That's all we wanted was that tom right there. Alright, so that's there. And that's kind of cool, but I hate it, so let's undo it. Let's say that, again, there's an even easier way. To us, this is probably one of the cooler innovations of the search function. That tom just didn't really do it for me, and now I'm getting tired of the hi-hat. Let me try a couple of other, what's Messy Rock? Oh, alright, I like that hi-hat. So this, oh, and it had my tom fill too. How ironic that that would happen in a demo. Let's right-click on this particular groove and hit copy. Now, here's what you're thinking. Rick, you just copied the MIDI groove, you're going to copy it down to your timeline, and part of that is true, but watch this. I don't want the whole groove. I just want that hi-hat. So I'm going to come down here and click on my MIDI and right-click, and when I go to paste, it's going to let me select from the MIDI what I want to add. So I just want that hi-hat. Great. Overwrites my regular hi-hat, and then let's go back in and then I want the hi-hat pedal. Simple enough, yeah? I didn't like that, so I just undo it, and we're back to where we started. So, this makes looking for the perfect groove a little bit easier. Fairly intuitive as well, yeah? Would everyone agree? It's not a lot of hoops to jump through.
When you're doing the initial tap to find, you could set your main tempo at anything.
Anytime
right?
you want, yeah.
Right, okay. So
You can tap it, you can drag it, you want it to be.
Okay, right. So you can go in there and...
Drummer drank too much last night, so yeah.
And then is it when it's doing that, is it looking for stuff that's also kind of in that recorded in that tempo?
It will show you. You can actually set it up so
the-
you can see. It's basically it's listening to the groove, like your kick snare combinations you had. It's actually looking for the pattern, not necessarily the tempo. So that's a great question. There is a feature where if you, let's say we pull this, we're in 120. So this is going to play back at 120 right here, this groove. Because that's where we're at.
Right.
But it's halftime, right?
Right.
So if we come to an up-tempo rock, we can go and preview the original tempo of 173 if we want to. So that may actually even inspire you to change your project tempo, having that there. And again, you can select whether or not that information comes up on the search.
Right.
Pretty cool, yeah? Okay. So this is where things get really interesting. This is where Chuck and Rich get to help us out. And Chuck's like, really? Where we get to do something really cool. It should be noted again that your song track is at kind of the bottom of its anchor at the bottom of every screen, so you can always get to it from wherever you are. We'll pull the drums back up. Let's, I'm going to just change a couple of drums out here really quick to match what we have in the live room, which is awesome. And we're going to kind of work a little bit now in what I would call a traditional way. So forget how awesome everything you've just seen is, because we've saved some of the most awesome stuff for now. One of the hang-ups with software and MIDI in general is the flexibility factor. Everyone here, I think, when I say MIDI, not too far from that thought process is the piano roll editor. And we all know that working with drums on the piano roll editor is kind of a weird thing. It makes manipulating your MIDI complicated. And that's only in relation to how easy it is to work with a real drummer. So what we're going to do is Rich is going to be out there. He's going to be doing his thing. He's going to be playing. And Chuck's going to be talking to Rich through the talkback mic like a producer would talk to a drummer or a band member in anyone's instance, where basically you're trying to find that groove. You kind of have the groove, but you can't make, a song out of just some kick, hi-hat, and snare. Most people can't anyway. So this is set up to show you and remind you of how this normally works in a regular session. So we're going to mute Easy Drummer, and then our good friend Rich Cooper out there is on.
Rich, you there still?
Just about.
Yeah. Bored to death? Hey, we're gonna play a little. Hey, can you add some ghost notes to that? Maybe some 16th notes? You're a great drummer, Ernie. Alright, just play a little softer maybe. And bring it down a little more. Alright, come on, bring it back up again. Little rhyme cymbal. Can you bring that right hand onto the floor, Tom? Now can you switch the snare drum for me? Sorry, man. How about, could you play that pattern and tambourine? And a tambourine at the same time? Nah, not gonna happen. All right.
Okay. So
Cool.
that's pretty basic. That's how you communicate. Would everyone say that's pretty accurate? Try this, try that. Now, again, I want to show you this new feature. We're back in our track. We have that groove. It's scary how much it sounds like the drum beats heard. So how do we do that? How do you talk to the software and get it to do all those things without dragging your MIDI into a DAW, opening the piano roll editor, and doing it all manually yourself? That was a great question. Luckily, we have an even better answer. I'd like to introduce to you for the first time in any software a function and feature that we here at TuneTrack are calling our Edit Play Style. Simply double-click your MIDI, and the first thing you'll see is the actual physical representation of everything contained in your MIDI track. So as it plays, you see what's happening. Simple enough. You'll notice there's an orange halo around the kit, meaning that it's selected everything all playing. You can actually go in and select individual pieces. They'll always have a green bar if they're actually included in the MIDI. You see a number of things grayed out because it's not included in the MIDI we're working with. Does everyone follow me so far? As we move to the left, you see an ominous knob that we call a mount. We'll talk a little bit more about that later. And then a velocity knob. I think everyone's probably fairly familiar with velocity. But let's really go through Chuck's demonstration one more time. So we're playing the groove. We've got the snare drum selected. We know it's selected because it's highlighted orange. And I believe Chuck said, can you give me some ghost notes? Let's come to the mount knob. Let's dial some stuff in. I think the next thing Chuck said is, can you go in and can you give me some 16 notes on the A? Turn it up a little bit. So now, before we go any farther, let me give you a little explanation of what's happening, because this is not common. This amount knob is an actual design. It's exclusive to TuneTrack, and it's based on an algorithm. And that algorithm has gone in and looked at the over 80,000 MIDI performances we've recorded in the span of our company, and it's created this sort of algorithm, if you will, that scans what a drummer is most likely to do next in this given groove situation. So even though there's math involved, you can't anticipate to any extent how the groove is going to turn out because it's musical. It's actually making decisions, like artificial intelligence, based on what's playing. So different grooves at different tempos will yield different results. It actually changes the dynamic feel and playing style of the performance in real time. And as we do this, it's all written to the MIDI that you've already got down here. If you don't like a decision you've made, you can simply go and reset the amount value back to where you want it to be. It's basically everything this shy of Swedish voodoo. I don't know the science that went into it, but it's pretty impressive. So let's go back and listen to our groove again as we've got it. Now, one of the things that happened next was Chuck said, hey, can we go to the ride cymbal? Now this poses a problem because as you can see we have grayed out instruments, there's no ride cymbal in this groove. Well, you see this ominous header bar called the power hand. The power hand is TuneTrack going into the MIDI world and emulating the drummer's lead hand, instrument hand, or right hand for a right-handed drummer. So when we need more ride, we simply drag the power hand to the ride. And once we drag the power hand anywhere, we have all command over the articulations actually going to control the groove. We also can go in when it's highlighted and change the amount, altering the groove endlessly. Let's go back to column. And then we went down to the ride, you know? Bring it back. Simple enough. Now, I've saved one of the best for last. I put the tom on because I think it's a little more drastic. One of the steps I skipped, if you remember Chuck's original request, was he wants Rich to play a little quieter. So let's go in and let's select the whole kit. And let's just turn that velocity down. What's happening? The volume's not just getting quieter, but the playing is getting quieter. The samples are changing, and that's literally what's happening. As we're going to lower velocities, you can actually feel the drummer tighten up. He was playing like this before and he's getting quieter. And that's your ears not fooling you. There are different samples at these lower velocity levels to make sure that the sound is accurate as we come down. It's not just the volume now. Not only are there different samples, obviously each drum is affected differently from the playing style. So when a drummer does get quieter, his hi-hat's going to be a little quieter than this. They're going to be a little quieter. Listen to that floor tom, and as you get it all the way down, this is the Mom Said Turn It Down preset right here. But conversely, if we bring it back up and we start playing, now we mash. Now the guitar player says turn it down preset. So we go back to original. And let's go back to our hi-hats. So another great thing, the groove is playing. For Rich, we asked him to swap snares. Not a challenge for each drum too. We never miss a beat. Now you can audition your instruments to your groove. No lag time. You're hearing minimal load time, if any at all. Right? And again, once you've changed it, change that. Change your snare volume. Oh, we want to. Now it's cinematic, apparently. Okay. Fantastic. And you can get into that again just by double-clicking your MIDI. So, really, really, really cool feature. Not only can you use the power hand to change the lead hand, but we also have another dialog box that you'll see called opening hit. You'll notice there's no cymbal crash on one. Let's turn that on. Let's see what happens. Can anyone guess what's going to happen? I don't know. Oh, now you have an opening hit. And guess what? It doesn't have to be a cymbal. Maybe you want to go back to our tom analogy and just hit a tom. Fantastic. Now it's surf music. Okay, let's dial that in a little bit. I think we all know this is. It's like when Greg is surfing on the Brady Bunch, and idle's going to fall off. So the reality is you have limitless MIDI options at your fingertips now. One groove becomes the perfect groove. That's pretty impressive, we think, from where we came with Easy Drummer 1. We haven't even opened a DAW. We haven't done anything outside of Easy Drummer 2 whatsoever. As far as we're concerned, the Edit MIDI playstyle changes the way you look at working with. I mean, if you were to go and try and use your piano roll after this, you'd probably just punch your computer screen. This makes this so much easier. Now, once you have your perfect groove and you've got it looped, just like Easy Drummer 1, you drag it to your desktop, right? Drag it straight into your DAW. Or we have a new wave export feature. It can export as a stereo wave file, 24-bit, straight to your desktop. And actually, if you wanted to go in and get technical, you could mute each channel and do each track individually if you wanted to, render them as all wave files. Ultimately, you can basically get all of your drum pre-production done in one program before you even open your DAW. Pretty amazing stuff. So one of the things about this being a successful tool for the guy at home is that songwriting element. How do I get in and write a song quickly? I think we would all agree. We sort of showed you how quickly it is to find some grooves, manipulate them, and get a song going. But it gets easier than that. I know that that seems impossible. So let's go back to this ominous song creator button that I threatened you with earlier, and let's click on it. And notice you just see a dialog that says drag your MIDI there. Simply drag the MIDI groove that you like there. And what's going to happen is our song creator is going to go through your MIDI files and search out complementary pieces to your groove and enable you to start to build your own song structures immediately. So you can always preview original groove here. That's the video. It sounds great. Okay, so you can add an intro, preview it. Very Sheryl Crow. Okay, so let's remove our original groove and you can just start dragging them in. You'll notice they're color-coded so that from a songwriting standpoint you can say, okay, here I'm in my verse, here I'm in my pre-chorus, and you can create any sort of song that you want all day long. You can add fills. If you say you want to fill at the end of a phrase, simply just drag it over the phrase. The fill will go ahead and adjust itself accordingly. Now, you would say to yourself, I don't think creating a song, or at least putting that together, could be any easier than that. To which I'd say you'd be surprised. Let's remove that, and let's take it one step further. Here's our original groove again. We love it, but we don't want to drag and drop every individual MIDI block because we really don't have time. We are that important. Simple. We come over to our predefined song templates, and here you have a number of templates designed around standard song formats. So AABA, ABA, ABA. So let's, for instance, ABC, ABC long. Let's make sure that we're good in there, and you just simply click on that, and it will populate on your timeline, and you have an entire song. You can then go in with all of the awesome editing tools that we talked about earlier and craft a song to your specific liking and move on from there. Now, one of the coolest production features of the software, too, that Matthias had indicated earlier, was if we go back just to our example about we asked Rich to swap a snare drum out and add a tambourine, and we all know those are things human beings can't do. But let's say in this particular chorus, we want our song to have a tambourine. We can simply turn on the tambourine pad, and it will instantly be added to that particular piece. I should probably put the cursor where we want it to play. That normally helps. Let's make it a little bit bigger. Da-da. Okay, well, we'll start here. You can hear the tambourine when it comes in and give you that. How about that? Anytime style. Bigger. The amount now for work accordingly. Velocity work. And that actual pattern is written to your groove. Now, what's interesting and should be noted about our MIDI percussion patterns, again, another kind of tune track innovation. Without getting too complicated, just like our velocity utilizes different sample sounds at different layers, our percussion performances use different sounds at different performances. So, for instance, the slower a tambourine performance gets, the longer the notes get drawn out in between. Makes sense, right? Conversely, the quicker it gets, the shorter the notes get. There's always a human element that tends to be missing from programmed percussion MIDI, and it's that space or that anticipation right before you hit the one. So the sound design team and the MIDI editors basically came up with sort of a hybrid MIDI that takes into account these different velocity layers, if you call them, for when you're playing faster or slower, but also incorporate what we're calling a pre-hit MIDI note, which is actually a note that corresponds to a sound that is going to happen right before the instrument strikes. So you get this very real feeling. If we turn the tambourine on again, and we'll solo it in the mixer, let's come over here.
Yeah. You can also tell that the tambourine actually changes sounds depending on the tempo. Yeah, that's what you're saying. So
if we were to go, let's start over again, and I'll actually go ahead and play that so you can hear it, and we'll open the editor, change the amount. Completely different. All written to your track, again in real time, so you can drop percussion or one-shots in from these pads anywhere you'd like to in your MIDI and turn your song into a complete composition before, again, you even leave EZdrummer 2. So just like when we originally talked about our instrument properties menu, clearly you have the same selections here. You have some shakers. For all of you that are into the cabasa, you have that too. We didn't want to shortchange you there. A couple of different tambourines. So again, the overall production of your drum and rhythm track can be complete as a songwriter before you even open Pro Tools.
Do it again and change the tempo down to like 60 or something.
60.
Yeah.
That's a man on
While
a mission
you
right
play it.
All right, let's go ahead. All right, we're going to give it a little here. We've got it muted.
So it changes sample, so you will hear it longer, like it would, like it is in the real life. So that's, and if you play it real fast, not maybe faster than it can, but
No, like death metal fast.
yeah.
So again, you hear all those subtle changes and things that actually make a percussion part a believable and realistic percussion part. Sound good? So there's a whole host of new tools developed for both songwriters and producers. Quite honestly, we were trying to make the program still very accessible, still very easy drummer, but add a lot of the features and a lot of the functions that a lot of our hardcore users have been asking for years. I'd say we've accomplished that. I think we have a brilliant sounding instrument that works with you as a songwriter and has been really designed by our team to never get in the way of the creative process. If you can think of how to do something intuitively in EZdrummer 2, you can pretty much do it.
What about